What's up, guys? It's Sam here, and I wanted to talk about a very, very interesting dichotomy with mental doping and physical doping. Before I do that, make sure you press that little red triangle that says subscribe and YouTube's little bell notification. Just tap on that until it's got that little parentheses around it, and then YouTube will notify you every time I post a new video. Okay, so with that being said, we've got two different things here that we want to talk about. Mental doping and physical doping. So we're just going to talk about what they are really quick, and then the interesting connotations that go along with each one of those, and maybe some of the reasons why. So we've got mental doping, which would be the things that are going to give you a mental edge, whether that's alertness or just some type of advantage, whether that's in school or performance at work or etc. I mean, things like Adderall or Ritalin or just come to mind, or modafinil. You can do microdosing with LSD. There's certain SARMs that are going to also help with that cross through the blood-brain barrier to have a nootropic type effect. And then physical doping, say PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, for any type of sport activity, right? And like you can SARMs or steroids or any like HGH or different things along those lines for performance enhancing. And the physical, right? Like in the gym, or if you're on a football field or basketball or whatever the case is, like cycling, there's different drugs you're going to use for cycling than you would for weightlifting versus if you're trying to increase your power output. Like there's different compounds that are going to help with each and every single one of these that is going to be specific to whatever it is you're trying to do in the physical sense. And there's doping on both sides, right? But think about the connotations about both of them, right? In the mental one, right? The mental doping, it's either, just not even slightly talked about. And that's maybe there's not enough awareness around like how much of it actually takes place, or there's just people don't care really, right? Like it's not like a concern because it's myself, right? And I'm just going to be able to perform better at work or whatever it is that I'm trying to do that would allow me to be some more successful. However, I decided to define that, right? And when you get into a business and you talk to certain people, there's a lot of that going on, whether you're aware of it or not. But it's not even slightly talked about. It's not frowned upon or looked at as a bad thing. If you get into academics, then maybe there's a little bit of an ethical question going on, potentially. But the amount of people when I was in my MBA program who were using some type of stimulant or like Adderall or modafinil or Ritalin or something along those lines to aid in their work and their performance in their MBA program. I mean, there's a lot of people who do that. I feel like the casual person on the mental doping side is almost the same as it is with physical doping. Now, on the physical front, think about how the connotations associated with PEDs in a physical sense, right? Like that's got very negative connotations. Like that person's cheating. That person is taking the shortcut. That person is not doing the right thing, right? They're taking PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. And you're like, why? Why is there such a dichotomy in the differences of these two things that are almost the same, just slightly different? But one of them is viewed as like, oh, good, because that person's super successful. But the other one's like, wow, that person cheated. That person's low. That person's scum. Like they used drugs that's the only reason they were able to win, right? And they looked on them as bad and just like not doing the right thing and it's not ethical or whatever the case is. And why might that be? So I came up with two like things, like hypotheses of what it could be. And you think of like WADA or something, which is the um, world something or whatever for drug testing or whatever, that a lot of sports organizations will use their standards for testing drugs in sport. And so you think fair, right? Is it fair that I would use PEDs and maybe you decide not to? Is that fair? But anybody who's lived life at all knows life isn't fair. Like, just innately. You could just be better at basketball than I am, so it doesn't matter if I use PEDs or not. You just are fucking 7'2", and you can perform way better than I can. Your heart just naturally is bigger than mine, so you have a better ability to increase the capacity amount of blood you can push through your system, or all these things go into it. And in a sense, I could argue you could actually use drugs to level the playing field, right? Because if you have somebody who's just a genetic freak, right, who does not use any PEDs, and you have everybody else, like, why shouldn't these people be able to use drugs so that it is fair, right? So you can use that argument on both sides. So I don't think that could be it. I mean, that's probably the facade, right? That's what people like to say it is. But in reality, I mean, you could use that in both directions. It's not. I mean, I don't think that holds up to a modicum of fucking analysis in terms of whether that's a valid point or not. And then you think about money associated with it, and you realize that why they might want to do this is because PEDs actually work. And they can benefit a tremendous amount of people, in my opinion. But supplement companies, which is billions of dollars, would lose their business, right? Because supplement companies make their money off of you or other people who buy the crap that does not work at all. Or that it works, but it's like a fraction of a percent, right? So you have like a PED or something that can actually get performance increases on a magnitude of double digits, right? We'll say 12% increase versus something you might be able to buy under optimal conditions for somebody who is at a deficit. They might be able to see some type of benefit at a fraction of a percent, right? So the supplement industry, I feel as though they would have an incentive to vilify people who take PEDs or any athlete who decides to use PEDs because they actually make money that way. And they can use that as a way to vilify that whole thing and spread rumors and false information around the risks associated with it, as well as they could try to say that they're not fair, or just any type of argument you could possibly think around PEDs, because then people are just going to believe whatever they fucking hear in the news most of the time. And if you can get that information out in the news, then people are going to believe that PEDs are bad, and that means it's cheating, and that person is taking the shortcut. When in reality, anybody who performs at a top level, the amount of work that goes in there to get to that level and then to use something on top of it to take them to the next level, I don't think a lot of people who are going to watch this have any understanding of the level of commitment and dedication it takes to get to that level at all whatsoever. And I think that has a big effect on it. Also, potentially the pharmaceutical industry, because again, if PEDs work, right, they're generally speaking pretty cheap, but pharmaceutical companies have an incentive to sell you, this name brand pen for $46 versus the generic pen right here that's 46 cents. Even though the 46-cent pen works just as well, or if not better, but they have an incentive to villainize that whole industry because it affects them as well. So I don't know. I'm just some thoughts and some conjecture on this. But it is very interesting how they're both viewed completely differently. And I would love to hear your opinion or thoughts down below in the comments on what could cause some of these things, or your thoughts on that. Or jump over to Instagram. The link will be in the description, and say what's up and give me your thoughts on this. I'm super curious to know what you think about why this is the case. Hope you guys have an awesome weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.